A third arraignment upcoming for former President Donald Trump. 4 o'clock at the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. He will appear on criminal charges and allegations that he tried to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Action News Now on your Thursday afternoon. I'm Josh Croup. We will have full coverage of this on 13 ABC. And our website later today of the actual indictment as the former president left his Bedminster, New Jersey golf club earlier this afternoon at about 1 o'clock to fly by plane to Washington, D.C., where he will be. Arraignments chose instead to do that is blocks away from the U.S. Capitol. And not only for the presidential race, and it's probably not going to be a big spot for the candidates running for president to be dropping into. It's not going to be a swing state, most likely. It is going to be a pretty contentious state for that U.S. Senate race. Senator Sherrod Brown up for re-election in 2024. Right now, there are 3 challengers on the Republican side. Businessman Bernie Moreno, who launched a failed U.S. Senate bid last year. One ultimately won by J.D. Vance. Secretary of State Frank LaRose, who has won statewide office before, and State Senator Matt Dolan, who also launched a failed bid for U.S. Senate last year. Dolan presents himself as the Trump alternative, who is just a straight-up conservative, doesn't want to get involved with former President Trump. However, the other 2 in this race, Bernie Moreno and Frank LaRose, very much are vying for the former president's endorsement. Frank LaRose saying that this indictment doesn't change his opinion. He says that everybody has a right to due process, and he expects to see that all play out. And they have, of course, criticized the political nature of what they see as this indictment. So Trump still carries weight here in the Buckeye State. How much does this third indictment change things? Does this third indictment change things? Rick, let's start with the fundraising power of Donald Trump, because he continues to get small dollar donations from people across the country, continues to get big dollar donations. What is the money going to right now? How much of it is going to his political or his criminal defenses, and how much of it is actually going toward campaigning?
Well, most of the money right now is going toward his paying of lawyers, either for himself or other people that the Trump operation wants the state keep in the fold and to cover their expenses. You can argue that the criminal defense and the political defense are one and the same right now. The legal and the political have really become intertwined. Donald Trump is making a legal case that's a political case and vice versa, and the money certainly backs that up. Right now, some of the outside groups that were so well funded in supporting Donald Trump in the past are pretty much broke because they've been so pressed to spend on legal expenses. It isn't to say Donald Trump can't go back to the spigot. I'm sure he'll continue to bring in small dollar donors surrounding the arraignment. It's notable to me that he decided to make the trip in person when he could have done it virtually. That to me says the campaign wants to exploit it as a fundraising apparatus. But the bottom line is that it's very expensive to face the legal charges that he does on as many fronts as he does.
So this is the third arraignment now. How have the polls reflected all of these different developments that we've seen over the course of the last few months on the legal front? Has he lost any steam? Is there any sign that he will lose any steam moving toward 2024?
Yeah, look, the first and the second indictments, the clear answer is no, he didn't lose any steam. If anything, he opened up a larger lead over his rivals because the biggest trend has been Ron DeSantis collapsing in the polls or seeing his numbers go down. Whether we see the same now might be different given the severity of the charges. This was about a former president alleged to have stood in the way of the peaceful transition of power. Maybe there's Trump fatigue that sets in over time, but we just haven't seen it yet. Anything that's come at him has actually just made him stronger to date.
And we haven't seen Trump fatigue in Ohio, at least a very contentious Republican Senate primary that is already starting to heat up. There are 3 candidates right now. One of them is an anti-Trump candidate, always has been, in Matt Dolan. But then you have 2 others, the current Secretary of State and a businessman, and Frank LaRose and Bernie Moreno, who are both vying for the president's endorsement and pushing for it pretty hard. What power does a Trump endorsement carry in 2024 for down-ballot candidates?
I think in Ohio in particular and other states that trend toward red, then the value of a Trump endorsement still it means a lot. I think a lot of people watched how J.D. Vance was able to overcome some of the others in the race despite a lack of political experience, and then beat a very experienced and well-funded and well-run campaign in Tim Ryan in the general election. That seems to be the ticket in a redder state. It's different in states that more trend toward purple. Ask Herschel Walker how that worked out for him in Georgia. We saw some big whiffs with Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania as well in 2022. So I think right now it's going to depend on the state, but in Ohio, you can understand why someone would want the Trump endorsement. The base is very loyal to former President Trump.
How much time is he going to have to campaign with all of the court appearances that he's going to have to make? You said that he had the option to do today's virtually, but of course, the showman that he is, he's going to do that in person. How many more court appearances are we going to have, and how is that going to affect the campaign schedule?
I mean, it's almost incalculable because you've got all these different cases and all these different jurisdictions. Many of them will require in person. Others he may just want it. But I do think today is instructive. Like the fact that he is coveting the limelight in this moment, I think that gets back to the point earlier about the political and the legal being one and the same. He's not a traditional candidate, to say the least. And yes, he won't be in as many diners to shake hands or maybe not even as many debates or forums, but he doesn't need that the same way that other candidates do. So yes, it will take him off the trail, but that might actually not hurt him in the same way that it might almost anyone else.
Finally, let's talk about Mike Pence's role in this. He could be a witness in this trial. The weight that carries for Mike Pence's presidential campaign is what?
Oh, he's now riding his whole campaign on the idea that he did the right thing. In fact, his campaign just today started selling hats that said "Too Honest," which is what, according to the indictment, Donald Trump said to him about kind of as a critique. Now Pence is now trying to use it as a badge of honor for his campaign. He's hoping that it vaults him back into the conversation, gets him onto the debate stages, and he has made clear, in uncertain terms as ever, that anyone who did anything close to what was alleged in this indictment should never be president again. That is so striking coming from Mike Pence.
All right, ABC News political director Rick Klein, we appreciate the time as always. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thanks for having me.